Hello listeners, this is Ed Walker. I'm making a video right now for Chris White of Nowhere to Run Radio on my experience with sleep paralysis and how I got it to stop. I've done shows on this. You can go to blogtalkradio.com/antimatterzone. Or my YouTube channel, you can type in blackhelicopterradio.com and that'll take you to my YouTube channel. People who have listened to the show know this about me, but I've never just made it in a concise and easy format. So here it is. This is for you, Chris White, and a tribute to your website, Stop Sleep Paralysis, and the video work you did on it. Alright, just a little background story. I was raised in the Mormon faith. I fell away from that when I was around 14 and 15, stopped going to church. Went from that to sort of calling myself a Christian to then just going downhill and calling myself an atheist. As a teenager, I basically just became very nihilistic and depressed and into just, thinking that life was meaningless, and because, I just had so many things within me shattered. But from there, I started getting into some very dark music. I mean, really satanic heavy metal, not just Ozzy Osbourne and Judas Priest and that kind of mainstream stuff. I'm talking about black metal, death metal, stuff that is literally meant to conjure up spirits. And I mean, and some of these bands are very serious. It's not all just shocking and rebellious, and some people say they use satanic imagery as a way to espouse their atheism. No, some of these bands are literal occultists, really into the occult, black magic, whatever you want to call it. And if you don't believe me, just look up the Norwegian black metal scene and the series of murders and church burnings that went on then. I got really into that. Okay, eventually I went to college and I had a roommate, and just mysteriously I get a roommate who is also into heavy metal, black metal, death metal, extreme metal, and who himself was an occultist. Okay? This is when my sleep paralysis first really started. I did have a few episodes before that as a young teenager. This is around the time when I was 18 and 19. When I was a teenager, I did have a few minor instances with sleep paralysis, but it really started then and started becoming more and more intense. I cannot tell you the reality that sleep paralysis is absolutely demonic spiritual warfare from my own personal experience. I know by now many of you are probably familiar with what sleep paralysis is, but for those of you who aren't, I will go into a brief description. Usually it happens when you're either waking from sleeping or falling asleep, and you're paralyzed, you can't move, your eyes work, you can see, but you literally cannot move, you cannot cry out, and it varies in degrees of intensity. And I've noticed a common pattern is that it starts out not so intense, just kind of upsetting and frightening, but it gets progressively more and more intense. And that was at least my case, and I've seen other people with similar cases. So it starts out, you're just confused, you don't know why you can't move, you're kind of freaking out, but it goes from that to eventually having entities literally attacking you, literally feeling like you're being sucked down into the earth, into hell. So yeah, 19 it started. From there, though, I eventually left that college, and it kind of simmered down for a while. But just recently, like 2 years ago, it started back up again. And what I was doing, I was getting really into UFO and abduction studies, reading them like crazy. And also, I was getting into some Eastern practices, trying to awaken my third eye, getting into some intense meditation practices, just some kind of New Age, which stuff that I think is absolute garbage now, and I have good reason for that. And it all kind of started back up. I literally thought I was losing my mind at one point. It would happen so frequently, and each time become more and more intense, that I had to try to figure out a way to stop it. So just a few instances of what happened to give you an idea of how absolutely frightening this is. I would wake up, I would have this intense feeling of fear, and you've had this it's hard to describe, but this intense feeling of evil in your surrounding area. But eventually, like I said, it went from just sensing that evil to actually seeing demonic presences in the area. Sometimes it'd be a shadow figure, very hard to make out. Sometimes it looked like a very slim, almost alien-like figure. I remember one time seeing it coming through my door in the absolute utmost fear you could ever imagine. From there, I had one experience where I woke up, and this was the worst I would say it ever got. Was one time I had these demonic-looking hands with claws on them, feeling like they're ripping you down, the pressure on your chest, pulling you through the bed. It was just hellish, and I didn't know what it was. I thought I was either losing my mind or I was having the beginning of some sort of alien abduction type experience. It wasn't until I started looking into sleep paralysis and saw all of the people who had it as well that I didn't feel so crazy. It actually was, in a strange way, a kind of relief to me. And then it wasn't until I stumbled upon Chris White's work on sleep paralysis, and then also the website StopSleepParalysis.org, that sure enough I was able to get it to stop. There's countless others like me with this testimony that the name of Christ, or I use the name Yeshua, just in Yahweh. Personally, that's just what I do. It does make it stop. I've had little to no. I've had very, very few instances with it, and when I do, I can usually get it to stop pretty quick. This shows the literally the supernatural power of the name of this the true God. You know, and you know what? I was kind of hesitant to put this video out here right now, to be honest, because I still have a little bit of embarrassment, people thinking I'm crazy, but at this point I just don't care. And for me to not put it out, I think would actually be much worse, because I think it's important for us to have the fear of you know, God in us, and not the fear of man. You know, so you can laugh, you can scoff at me, you can tell me I'm crazy, you can say I'm deluded, you can say whatever you want, but it changed me forever. And for me to deny the power and how that was shown to me that is the true God, to stop this spiritual demonic warfare against me personally, forever changed me. And unfortunately, I don't know, you know, I can only say so much, and it's up to you to decide if you want to believe me, but I'm just telling you the truth from my perspective. I've got nothing to really gain from this, you know. In fact, I'd say that more to lose, and people tend to look down on stories like this. And so I just Chris posted a Facebook post asking people to share their stories. So I've been wanting to do this for a long time, anyways. But I really want to thank Chris White for putting that information out there. Literally, not jokingly, the implications of it are huge as far as salvation and being saved by the true God, Yahweh, Yeshua. So that is my story of sleep paralysis. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you later.